Joining us now in our Book Talk segment, great to welcome a man who has written a very fascinating book just out in paperback today as we record it. It was a bestseller in hardcover, and it kind of goes into thing of culture, what makes a hit, what makes things popular, and it's called Hit Makers, How to Succeed in the Age of Distraction. We're joined today by Derek Thompson. He's the senior editor at the Atlantic magazine. He joined us by telephone. Derek, good to talk with you. How are you?
Great to talk to you. I'm very well, thanks.
Yeah, good to have a chance to talk with you. I read through the book, and being a radio guy, I was most interested in the couple of chapters you had in there on what makes hit records. It's always been kind of a thing in the radio business. How does that happen? But your book really goes into more than that, but kind of what makes things popular. Interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I think radio is a really important thing, an interesting way to frame this discussion, right? Because the two theses of this book are, one, that people like ideas that are at this sort of perfect intersection between the familiar and the surprising. We like products that are new, so long as they remind us of familiarities. That's number one. But number two is that even though creators might not like to think it, distribution actually is just as important in expanding popularity as the creation of a product itself. And radio, obviously, is an incredibly important channel of distribution and exposure. So, if you think about sort of the history of pop music in America, in many, many ways, it is a story about how both labels and DJs and radio executives manage the airwaves, because that's how songs became popular. It's because they played on the radio. And so in thinking about sort of what are the proverbial radio stations of other industries? What are the channels of exposure? That's a really important question to figure out, essentially, how you're going to make something popular.
I grew up in New York, and I kind of caught the tail end of Top 40 radio, which was really, the top stations, you knew the top 10 songs every week, or the top 40 songs were always played, and that's kind of gone away now. I guess the internet is really kind of taken over as far as that goes, but it's interesting to determine I think you have a whole story in here about Bill Haley and the Comets. He was one of the first rock and roll guys, how his song, Rock Around the Clock, really was kind of, he had to really persist to get that done. He didn't really think it was going to get done originally, right?
Yeah, he really did. I mean, that's one of my favorite songs in the book, one of my favorite stories in the book, I should say. Rock Around the Clock came out in 1954, and it was kind of a dud. A lot of people ignored it. Then it comes out again in the movie Blackboard Jungle, this movie about juvenile delinquency that's kind of like Rebel Without a Cause. Comes out in Blackboard Jungle, and all of a sudden, it flies to number one, first rock and roll song to ever hit number one on the Billboard charts, and becomes the second most popular song of all time in terms of singles sold. So, it requires people to ask this really big question, which is, how did the same product be so disparaged in 1954 and then become such a world-conquering hit the following year? And the difference here is distribution. Somehow the song meant something different. It did a different job when it was in a movie about juvenile delinquency than when it was just playing on the radio like any other song. It was more scandalous maybe in the movie. It created more of a stir among the public when it was in the movie. But I think this goes to show, just like you said, that radio is such, or that exposure, distribution is such an important part of popularity, and we just can't forget it.
They didn't use the term then, but it went viral, right? And you talk about that in the book today with the internet and things going viral. That's a whole other aspect of ideas getting out there, but nobody quite knows what makes something hit big, and even on the internet, right? I mean, it's still a mystery how that works.
Well, I think my book actually tries to answer that mystery. It essentially says that although we tend to say that when something goes big really quickly, it was just it just went viral, we say. But in fact, I think there's a pretty clear way that information spreads on the internet that actually has nothing to do with virality. I talked to some data scientists who studied YouTube videos getting very, very popular very, very quickly on the internet. And what they said essentially is that when they look at the map of these ideas catching on. It turns out that the map of these videos catching on doesn't look anything like a virus. It looks like a bunch of diffuse explosions, a bunch of diffuse broadcasts, and that's really how information spreads on the internet. So when you hear that something went viral, it's important not to just take that, on trust and say, oh, well, I guess it's just spreading between organic people. No, maybe it's being pushed by someone. Maybe someone has an interest in pushing it out there. And so seek that dark broadcast, that underlying broadcast moment is very important.
Yeah, I think the mystery isn't that certain things are popular, it gets out there, but certain things that people push out there don't do it, and other things that look kind of silly become huge, like a dog in the backyard. Cute dog. Why does that video get 10 million and something that may be more worthwhile gets nothing?
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, popularity is not a register of quality exclusively. It can be a register of emotionality. It can be a register of cuteness, a register of outrage, but it's rarely a register of quality. This is not something new to internet memes. I think you could also say that, the 1950s, some of the best songs by, the true forefathers of rock and roll, some of those black bands like the Orioles, did not get their fair due. And so throughout history, you have the story of true artists being overlooked because networks and distribution patterns tend to focus human attention somewhere else. But I still think it's important, therefore, to study both sides of this, both to study the content and to study the distribution.
I know you talk about it in the book, and again, so many aspects, avenues now to get information out there, internet and still TV and radio are still popular and all that, but it seems to be harder now to get noticed, right? Even with all those avenues, everybody's kind of their own journalist on their phone now, but that's a whole new challenge, isn't it? I
do think that it's harder now to get noticed. I mean, the number of books published worldwide, just for me, reading a book, the number of books published worldwide has grown by a factor of 7 since the 1980s. The number of original scripted television shows has grown by a factor of 7 since the late 1990s. There is so much more out there competing for your time and attention. And speaking of time, there's still only 24 hours in a day, so there isn't a whole lot more time to consume all this new stuff. So yeah, people who are in the creation business are facing a lot more competition than they used to. And as a result, I think one way to grapple with this is to say, look, this isn't the 1960s. This isn't a world where everyone has a television set in America and there's only like 4 channels. This is a world where everyone has a television set and a smartphone and a tablet and a library full of books, and their attention is divided between them. So in order to get people's attention, don't make something that's for everybody. Make something that's for a niche, for a cult even. And in fact, I think that's what culture is becoming, just a series of cults, a series of niche interests that accumulate to something that looks like a mainstream, but is not.
Yeah, kind of what radio became kind of before the internet took off.
Indeed,
more narrowcasting, and now the internet. You can find just about anything you want, you're interested in, online to find out about. But it's not broadcasting anymore. It's really even less than narrowcasting, real minutia casting.
That's
almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Minutia casting. There you go. There's your term.
I just read the word. Well, it's a fascinating book. It's called Hitmakers: How to Succeed. And again, in the age of distraction, we're all distracted every day, so we have to try and get focused. And it's a great book, just out in paperback. Derek Thompson has been our guest. Give out your website, Derek, if you have one. Get people more interested in the book.
People can go to DerekThompson.net, or they can buy the book Hitmakers on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Great. Derek, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for being with us.
And you. Thanks so much.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or DougMilesMedia.com.